Ooh, somewhere over the rainbow, way up high, and the dreams that you dream of once in a lullaby. Oh, somewhere over the rainbow, bluebirds fly.
Well, hello, Sharon. How are you today?
I'm good, and you, Mark Silverman.
I'm doing pretty good. It is time for Over the Rainbow, and we
Uh,
have
we have an extra participant this week. It's not Curly. Who is that?
this is Jelly Bean, who is going to be really annoying,
Okay.
but she's getting better at it. Maya,
Well,
you can be
we have
quiet.
we have an interesting list for today. Starting off with, of course, Kirstie Alley. That
Kirstie
was a bit of a
Alley.
surprise. Yeah, nobody knew she was sick. 71 years old. I thought she was younger than that. Died from colon cancer. Um, so it's a reminder to everyone to go for their colonoscopies. And it used to be they would say anyone over 50. I've now seen commercials saying that you should start doing that when you're 45. I've been going for colonoscopy since I was 32.
I don't.
Yeah,
I've stopped counting the tests that they do, but yeah,
right.
I know a lot of people. It's a little bit of a segue, but it's relevant and pertinent. I know a lot of people who tend to be an ostrich when it comes to their medical condition. They don't want to
Hmm.
do
Yeah, if they
colonoscopies
don't, if
because
they don't, yeah, if they don't find out, then it's not there, right?
yeah, they'd rather not know, and by the time they find out, it then becomes too late. So
Hmm.
and there's also an element of, oh, am I overreacting to X, Y, or Z, and that can be damaging. I mean, I know I don't tend to, but I even did after my heart attack. I had a couple of chest pains or pangs, let's say sensations, let's
Hmm.
call it that I didn't want to just jump on the phone or run to the ER because I thought I was overreacting. And really, they say when it comes to things like that, much, much better to overreact than ignore something that could be
Better safe
serious.
than sorry. Better
Yeah.
safe
Go
than sorry.
go in for a false alarm rather than ignore something that could end up being that if you caught it earlier
Yeah,
could be
but the
handled.
prospects of sitting in the ER for hours is just something nobody really wants to endure.
Mention the word heart and you don't end up sitting very long.
Ah,
I've found that out. Kirstie Alley, I mean, yes, it was. I don't think her death was pending, but she's never been a picture of good health. She went from being a cocaine addict to battling weight issues and yo-yoing her weight up and down for most of her life. And there are those that say that the up and downs can be worse than even maintaining
I
an.
totally believe that until you're ready to really commit to losing weight, it's much better to be what's considered obese than to yo-yo your weight. So, for example, I'm losing weight now, but it's not a diet, like in terms of I have to lose this much,
Right.
or that there's a deadline for it. It's more about, working with a nutritionist and, given the maladies of conditions I have, learning what I can eat, how much of it I can eat, and balancing what that is more, you lose weight slower that way, but I know as it comes off, I have a better chance of keeping it off because very often people slide back into old habits after they lost their weight, which is what causes that yo-yo effect.
Mm-hmm. Now, talking about Kirstie Alley, when did you first become aware of her?
I'll tell you. It was.
Actually, I would think
Was
I
it?
know it.
Was it? Was it for her first? I believe it was her first role, where she
Yeah.
played the Vulcan, named Lieutenant Savick in Star Trek: The Wrath of Khan.
And that's
Um,
I forgot, even as I asked the question, I forgot at first how much of a Trekkie you were.
oh
And
yeah,
she was bald.
she was
She
quite
was
the
bald
sexy
headed.
bold. Well, yeah, she was quite the sexy bold Vulcan.
Yeah, she made that bald look really rock. And it really virtually was her first. She had done one uncredited part on a mediocre TV show. She had been, I think, a contestant on a game show, and then she
That
got.
that Yeah, she. Well, I had other credits include film credits. I mean, everybody, of
Well,
course,
no,
thinks of
but what I'm
Cheers.
saying is,
Yeah.
before that role as Savick, she really did
Uh-huh.
nothing. That
Right.
was, for all practical purposes, she didn't do commercials. She didn't have
Nope.
all these a string of bit parts. She just exploded with the role that got that
That
was
would be
probably
called an
the
overnight
character that got
sort
more
of yeah,
pre-release
sort of an
publicity.
overnight sensation.
Yeah.
It was a breakthrough moment for sure. Um,
Plus the
but
Wrath of Khan.
most people think of Cheers when they think of
Well,
Kirstie Alley.
right, eventually, but the Wrath
Um,
of Khan was the
Epic.
second Star Trek movie,
Yep, it
but
was
it was
epic.
certainly the best of that first batch of Star Trek movies.
Oh, absolutely.
And maybe to this
Um,
day is still the best.
Probably the other films that I've read she was in, Look Who's Talking was probably my favorite. She also was in a movie called Blind Date and Summer School. She won a couple of Emmys. I didn't know about that.
Yeah.
She won an Emmy for Outstanding Lead Actress in a Comedy Series in '91.
Making your way in the world today takes everything you've got. Taking a break from all your worries sure would help a lot. Wouldn't you like to get away? Sometimes you wanna go where everybody knows your name, and they're always glad you came. You wanna be where you can see our troubles are all the same. You wanna be where everybody knows your name. You wanna go where people know people are all the same. You wanna go where everybody knows your name.
And I think that was for Cheers. And then
She had
she
been
won another
nominated for Cheers a bunch of times before she
and
finally won.
then she won another Emmy in a miniseries or special in 1994's David's Mother. And reading the article, I learned that maybe this was the series you were talking about. She was in a series called Veronica's Closet,
Oh
which
no,
I
that
never
was
heard of.
she
Yeah,
starred
I
in
never
that.
heard of. Yeah, I
That was her
never.
show.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
never
no.
heard of it. So,
She had been in her first appearance was in a TV show called Quark. Veronica's Closet was just it was an okay sitcom. There was nothing bad, nothing great about it. It was just,
well,
something between this and that. You
right.
know,
She was
uh,
also. I'm not big on reality TV, but
she was.
she appeared. Yeah, she appeared as a contestant on season 12 of ABC's Dancing with the Stars. And then she appeared on
I was
season
surprised to find out she
22.
came in second.
Yeah, and then she appeared on season 22 of the British version of Celebrity Big Brother, where she came in second.
Yeah,
She also
but then she
competed in
also, more than that, she starred as her own reality show
and then
involving her weight loss.
she also competed in season 7 of the Fox's The Masked Singer, which I still have not seen. I'm not interested,
I
but
actually watched. I finally binge watched like the first 4 or 5 seasons less than a year ago,
oh
and
yeah, I didn't
Truthfully,
even realize it was. I didn't even
yeah,
realize that it's been on that long. I thought maybe this is like the third year.
I found it way
Um,
more entertaining than I thought I would.
right. And then she was also. Yeah, I also found out she had been married to Parker Stevenson, who
Oh yeah,
I had a
she was
crush on when he was on Baywatch,
she was
and they
married.
have
I mean,
and they
she was married to Park Stevenson right up until she died.
yeah, and then they had two children together. I had no idea.
I'm not sure they were her children or adopted. Well, yeah, I
From
think
what I read,
they adopted.
from what I read,
They were
he is the
adopted kids.
father. He's the father, so I would
No, they
imagine.
adopted. They adopted the two kids.
Did they?
Yeah, but
I did
before
not
Parker
read that.
Stevenson, I thought her first marriage was just as interesting. You know who she
Mm-hmm.
married? Who her first husband was?
I know you're going to tell us.
Guy named Bob Alley.
Who is that?
Just somebody, her high school sweetheart, who coincidentally
Oh,
had the same last name as she did.
okay.
Kirstie Alley was her family, was her name. She was born Kirstie Alley, and she married a guy named Bob Alley.
About that.
So
I
I
didn't
thought
see
that
that
was
in my research. They didn't mention that.
I thought that was
Um,
interesting.
yeah.
You know, yeah, she was in quite a few decent movies, a bunch of one-off TV. I thought this was weird, just a quirk. I don't know if it's a quirk of the way things were credited, but in one show, for instance, here, Fat Actress, which was
Yeah.
more or less, about her weight loss. She's listed as Kirstie Alley. Then in Kirstie Alley's Big Life, she's listed as herself. So in other words, there's sometimes when she played Kirstie Alley, where she's credited as Kirstie Alley, and there's others where she's credited as herself. Dancing with the Stars, she's listed as herself.
Mm-hmm.
But on other shows, she's listed as Kirstie Alley. I just think that I'm not sure why that is the case.
Hmm.
But then
I
she
don't
had
know.
one-offs in like the Goldbergs and King of Queens in the middle,
Oh,
but
that's more like guest stars, right? When a
yeah,
few
yeah,
guest
yeah.
stars.
Hot
Right.
in
I didn't.
Cleveland, a couple of episodes here and there,
Mm-hmm.
except for Cheers and then Veronica's Closet. I don't think she was. And then the couple of reality shows. I don't think she was in any other sitcoms.
No.
After the Look Who's Talking movies, I don't even think she had a hugely prominent film career. I'm looking, and Look Who's Talking Now was the third, and that was in 1993. Everything that came after that, pretty. Deconstructing Harry is the only one that I really even remember. Now, I didn't see it; I
Mm-hmm.
just remember it. I don't remember a movie called Syrup or Accidental Love. The last film was in 2015.
Right.
So, and she did mostly reality shows and guest appearances, occasional guest appearances. Looks like between 15 and 22, with The Masked Singer being her last. And instead
Right.
of coming in seventh, she was eliminated eighth in The Masked Singer. The one other thing that I think we have to mention before wrapping up on Kirstie Alley is she was also, I missed the whole, she was also quite public and quite noted, one of the more famous Scientologists,
Oh.
and very committed to it. She actually gives it credit for helping with her weight loss and getting off the cocaine and other things. But
Okay.
that's a weird thing, something beyond a religion, that's for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we're moving on.
Yeah. If you have
We're
nothing
moving
else,
on. We're not moving to the east side though. We're moving on with William Henke.
Henke.
Yeah, I did not know who he was, but the minute that I heard Orange is the New Black, I was like, "Oh, he's great." And then I didn't find out a whole lot about him, but he's 56 years old. It says that his death was undisclosed, but in
No, it wasn't.
2021, hang on,
Okay.
it said, what I was reading said his death was undisclosed, but in 2021, he posted that he had a 90% blockage in an artery and he had received 2 stents in his heart. So I'm thinking he most likely had a heart attack. Did you see something that was official?
I thought I did, but right now my notes just froze up and I'm unable to access them.
Okay.
I was
I
surprised
also
to find out that he had such a
a
well, I don't.
career. He had a
He
real
had a
acting
significant
career.
athletic career.
Yeah, he
He-
was yeah, I did not know he was a football player. He also had a more prominent acting career than I knew
but
about.
to go back to the football for a minute, I mean, I don't know that he was ever a star because he was cut by his first team almost
Giants.
immediately, and then apparently he went to several teams. So I mean, just getting picked up by one team after another
But
is a good thing.
he was eventually picked
But
up
he
by the
played on a
Denver
Super Bowl.
Broncos. Right. He was eventually picked up by the Denver Broncos that made the Super Bowl team in 1990, but that team did lose to the San Francisco 49ers.
And
Um, he
I
was
don't know what degree he played. I don't know how active
right.
he was
It
on the
doesn't
field. I don't know how
say.
many
It
snaps
doesn't
he
say.
took.
All I have is that he was 6'3", 275 pounds, and he was a defensive linebacker.
Okay,
Um,
now we're talking about his film career and his acting career.
yeah,
Where
he
where where Kirstie Alley, except for Look Who's Talking movies and the Star Trek, most of the
right.
movies he was in were pretty forgettable. He had he was in movies. He was in Space Jam. He
Yeah,
was
but you
in
know what? But can we back up for a minute?
yeah.
Because I found this to be interesting how he got into acting in the first place. He had, retired after his injuries, and then he had been like he had a number of jobs, including assistant football coach at a community college in California. And then after hearing about a need for actors who were football players for a Pizza Hut commercial, he went for a tryout, and from there he was invited to an acting class. And as they say, the rest is history. He started in 1996 with the film Mr. Wrong, which starred Ellen DeGeneres. And then, like, he started to go into film credits, Space Jam. He also I have that he had done some TV shows, ER, Judging Amy, Dexter,
Well,
October Road, and Lost. Did you? I was a Judging Amy fan. That was the only
well,
one
now that I've
that I
gotten
watched.
back into my notes, I was really quite impressed with his TV resume. Uh,
Uh-huh.
First of all, yeah, he played, and I'm trying to remember. He was on Orange Is the New Black as the prison guard for
He was
several
gay. He was
seasons.
actually a gay prison
Gay
guard.
prison guard. Don't think I don't think it was that aspect of his character was exposed immediately. I seem to remember that
No, over a
coming
span. I
out
mean, yeah,
later.
yeah.
It's just and I don't and it was just a thing. It was just
It was really not until after the prisoners sort of staged the prison break and took
right.
over the jail
But
that
but if I remember
yeah.
correctly, it wasn't like a focus of an episode. It was just and he has a boyfriend.
I know it's something that came out in his character. I thought it was
Yeah,
great.
yeah, and that's just it. They didn't make it into a thing. It's just a thing. It was just a mention. It
Right,
wasn't like
right. No, but that's what
it
was
wasn't
great about
Ellen coming
it.
out. It was just and by the way, he has a husband type of thing or boyfriend.
Right. And
And
most
he ended up redeeming himself in the end of the series.
yeah. I tell
But
you though, but
yeah,
I was very surprised that he had a career that spanned 25 years.
well, his movies, except for those first couple,
The
were
Space
relatively
Jam.
anonymous. But his TV roles, even if he He was 2 episodes of Nash Bridges. He was on Chicago Hope, ER, The Pretender,
Mhm.
Sports Night, The Michael Richards Show, Judging Amy, CSI, Dexter, Cold Case. These were all well-known,
Right.
very popular shows. Law and Order, Life on Mars. That was kind of fun. That didn't last long. That was a fun show. Trust Me, CSI Miami, Royal Pains. I mean, Justified. These are just great shows. The Office, Castle, Hawaii Five-O. So his TV
The
resume,
old one or the new one?
oh, the new one, 2015.
Uh-huh.
MacGyver, The Stand, Law and Order. And what's remarkable to me, for such a big, distinctive looking guy,
He's a
that he was
big
on all
guy,
these shows that I watched
and I didn't notice
and
him.
blended it in.
Yeah,
That's a sign of a good actor.
yeah.
M- to some extent, he almost meets the quality of should have been more of a household name than he is. You know,
Right.
even as a celebrity, as an actor.
Well, along with those many character type actors that we've covered for sure.
Yeah, and he definitely made quite a good career for himself.
That's what I'm saying.
Much better than I
Yeah.
would have imagined it was.
Absolutely.
So do we have anything else on Mr. Henke?
No, we're moving on to, we have 2 names coming up that have a lot to do with one another. One is George Newall. He was 88 years old, a co-creator of Schoolhouse Rock. I gotta tell you, I love that show. Well, it wasn't really a show. It was more like an in between your shows type show, right? Like
Oh,
almost like
it was not an actual series.
it was, but it was not. But I mean, it was
In
like a
other words, it was
2-minute.
just the songs, like the
Pretty
one about
much.
Bill. Okay,
Yeah, pretty much.
I had thought
But
it
the
was a
thing
show
is,
that I never watched because I've
no,
seen
it
Making a
was
Bill a number
it
of
was
times.
it was an iconic educational series. The one, in fact, I had it and I used to play it for my kids as being an elementary school teacher on occasion when they were in play period. I used to play it because it was the kind of thing for preschoolers.
Yeah, but
You
what I
know,
guess I'm
it
getting at,
was
Sesame Street, which we'll talk about, was a half-hour
no,
show that was
not
scheduled at this
no,
time.
not at all.
Schoolhouse Rock was not.
No, it was more like you ever see FYI, which was a little segment with Hal Linden in between the soap operas.
No.
It was a little series that came in between your cartoons
So it
that helped
wasn't a scheduled series. It was just
It
something that was
absolutely was. It absolutely
well, it
was. It
wasn't
was on every
okay.
Saturday
Every
at a
Saturday at what
specific
time?
time. Every Saturday in between, like a block of cartoons.
It wasn't a
And
standalone show, though. That's what I mean.
no, it
It
was
wasn't
not.
tune in at 10 o'clock and you'll watch Schoolhouse Rock when you're
Well, no,
watching this
if you
show
let's say you
somewhere
were
in there.
watching, let's say you were watching ABC. It was all ABC. Or let's say you were watching a block of cartoons, superheroes at 10, followed by, I don't know, Gigantor at 11, and some other show that you
Okay.
like following that. In between each show, there was a different Schoolhouse Rock.
Okay.
So they used to cover, so Newall was one of the co-creators of this. It ran for 11 years from 73 to 84, and it helped educate and entertain generations of children across the country. He was the last living founder and advertising executive, and I didn't know he was a jazz pianist for the show. Episodes covered civics, math, science, and grammar while presenting learning in musical form. So I had 2 favorites. It was called Conjunction Function and I'm Just a Bill. So
Right.
you can look for those when you edit.
Conjunction, junction, what's your function?
Hooking up words and phrases and clauses.
Conjunction, junction, how's that function?
I got 3 favorite cars that get most of my job done.
Conjunction, junction, what's their function?
I got and, but, and, or. They'll get you pretty far. And that's an additive like this and that. But that's sort of the opposite. Not this, but that. And then there's or. O-R. When you have a choice like this or that. And, but, and, or get you pretty far.
Oh, I'm Just a Bill is probably the most famous because it's not only been
Conjunction
shown
function
often,
is up there.
it's
Conjunction
also been
function.
spoofed. I'm
Yeah,
Just a Bill has been
conjunction function, what's
spoofed
your
on almost
function?
every comedy show that's out there.
When I started, I wasn't even a bill. I was just an idea. Some folks back home decided they wanted a law passed, so they called their local congressman, and he said, "You're right, there ought to be a law." Then he sat down and wrote me out and introduced me to Congress, and I became a bill. And I'll remain a bill until they decide to make me a law. I'm just a bill, yes, I'm only a bill, and I got as far as Capitol Hill. Well, now I'm stuck in committee, and I'll sit here and wait while a few key congressmen discuss and debate whether they should let me be a law. I hope and pray that they will, but today I am still just a bill.
Yeah, but yeah, that was great. It made a brief comeback in the 1990s, and I read that because the series is about 50 years old. A celebration of the life of Newall is scheduled for Saturday at the St. Andrews Golf Club in Hastings on the Hudson, which I'm well aware of since I went to school out there for a little while. January 3rd, 2023 marks the 50th anniversary of the show first airing on ABC. And to commemorate it, the Walt Disney Company is set to air a national primetime sing-along. Throughout its run, the show won 4 Emmys. And there are several books have also come out from the show, including the official Schoolhouse Rock Guide and an adult coloring book set to release soon. As one who loves to color before it became like this big thing for adults, I want one.
I like the actual inspiration. He was in advertising, and
Yes.
the president of his agency said, "My son can memorize and sing along to every song by Jimi Hendrix and the Rolling Stones. Why can't he learn math that way?" So they came up with the magic 3 is a magic number, which helped teach the times table. And that was
Right.
the first that
1 times 8 is 8. 2 times 8 is 16. 3 times 8 is 24. 4 times 8 is 32. And 5 times 8 is 40, you know. 6 times 8 is 48. 7 times 8 is 56. 8 times 8 is 64. 9 times 8 is 72. And 10 times 8 is 80. That's true.
you can
I remember
put
that one
anything to
too.
music. Yeah,
Yep, I remember that one too.
it makes
So,
sense.
So yeah, kind of fitting into the preschool genre for our parents who listen to our show. They and you had mentioned Sesame Street. Bob McGrath, who was 90 years old, just recently passed, and I gotta say, you know, we were already like 13, so that's sort of almost after
Yeah.
our time. But he makes me think of Mr. Rogers because he was known as the friendly neighbor, Bob Johnson, as an original cast member on Sesame Street. So I guess that, you know, when they first opened, you would see them all sitting on the stoop.
Sunny day, sleeping up, clouds away. On my way to where the air is sweet.
Wow.
Can you tell me how to get to Sesame Street?
You know, he was a founding cast member, and he was an actor and singer who entertained children for generations around the world. I guess I didn't realize that.
Not just children. He was in the army where he performed for
Yeah,
2 years in the Seventh Army Symphony Orchestra.
right. And he was so before it first aired in 69, it says that he appeared in 47 seasons, but before that, he got his start as a singer with the Mitch Miller
Mitch Miller,
sing-alongs.
sing along with
Mitch Miller
Mitch.
sing-along, yeah, sing-along with Mitch Miller TV series, and was an international performer before becoming what they call the generational icon.
He was a
as one of-
superstar in Japan.
yes, he had many. That's why he was considered an international star. Many concerts in Japan.
And that's he appeared as a guest on To Tell the Truth and I've Got a Secret because of that
Yeah.
before Sesame Street, which seemed to then be the bulk of his career.
Yeah,
But
he
I mean,
helped,
nothing.
and he also helped make several of Sesame Street's best known songs. The only one that I knew from this list was called People in Your Neighborhood. So maybe you can include that when you edit. And then there's another song called Sing a Song, but the only one I know is the Carpenter version of that. So
I don't know if
that's
it's the same. I doubt that I've ever actually sat down and seen an entire episode of Sesame Street. I've seen.
Oh no, I remember seeing portions of it when I would be at my cousin's house, and my cousin Amy, who was younger than me by quite a few by 5 years, would sit there and watch and watch it. That's when they first started teaching Spanish on Sesame Street as well.
Oh.
But I do have to say that I do adore Elmo. And recently, when I watched the parade, I noticed that they have a new character. I think it's a dog, and I think it's gay. I know they also have a character that's in a wheelchair. So
They're just so woke,
yeah.
so woke.
So yeah, so they're pretty amazing. As the show continues to evolve. Not having any kids and not teaching anymore. When I was teaching, I used to tune in just to be sort of like know what my kids were into, but not being in the school system anymore. I don't really tune into that sort of thing. I'm not up on it. That's all I have on.
I wonder what it was like because they said in 2016. Sesame Workshop announced that McGrath would not return for the show for its 47th season because it would be
but he
retooling
did
series.
continue.
He came back. He did public events and then came back for an appearance in 2019.
He didn't totally drop out of sight.
No,
Yeah.
but I don't know how. In other words, he wasn't retiring. I don't know how you fire a guy who's been with the show for that long.
Oh, a grocer sells the things you eat, like cereal and cheese and meat. Whatever food you're looking for, you're sure to find it in my store.
Because a grocer is a person in your neighborhood.
In your neighborhood.
He's in your neighborhood.
A grocer is a person in your neighborhood. A person that you meet each day.
So that wraps us up on our child entertainment feature.
Our preschool information honorees, I would say, very, very important.
Brings us to Julia Reichert.
Yeah, she's another one of these people. You know what? I had not heard of her, but by the time I was done researching her, she became someone who I very much admired.
I'm glad to hear you say that because I wasn't aware of her, and having looked at some profiles, nothing really stands out at me. Nothing.
Not really. She's 76 years old. She died from bladder cancer. I had read she was known in the international film world as the godmother of American independent documentaries. Um, that's quite the title, I think.
Mhm.
Noted for the way she explored the stories of ordinary working class people in relationship to gender, social, economic class, and activism and race in America, which I think is important for her time, but almost even more important now. So I think she'll be a lost voice for what our country is going through. She is an Academy Award winning documentarian whose film often wrestled with race, gender, and class. Um, I have not heard of any of her films, but her films include, just grabbed a couple of titles. It said 3 Academy Award nominees, Union Maids, and Seeing Red, Stories of American Communists, The Last Truck, which was the closing of a GM plant, and then, yeah, I actually put that down twice. And The Last Truck, I think she did 2 of them. It was documented the last GM truck rolled off the Moraine assembly line. And in 2020, she and her partner Stephen Bognar won an Academy Award for Best Feature Documentary and a Sundance Film Festival Best Director Award for American Factory. Usually, I'm pretty in tune with the different independent films that are mentioned when they do the festivals.
Mhm.
But I'd not heard of any of that. It was hard to keep the information edited. I didn't want to go too much of a deep dive, but but I have here, and jump in whenever you want.
Mhm.
She the way that she got into this, she was shaped by growing up in the Midwest in the 60s. She was part of a small group of female students who read provocative essays about women's liberation while questioning social norms.
Well, she went
So,
to
you get a
she went
vibe,
to she went to Antioch College in Ohio, which
y-
is kind of known to
yeah,
be
Antioch
on those
College.
fringes.
Yeah, we both know somebody who went to Antioch.
Hmm.
I don't know if you know who Debbie Zimmerman is.
I remember Debbie and Alyssa Triffelman went there as well.
Oh, did Alyssa go there as well?
Yes.
Um, I don't remember her wanting. Yeah, Debbie didn't stay out there, but it'd be interesting to find out
Well,
where Alyssa went another
I
day.
found kind of interesting when she did the closing of the GM plant. I can relate to that because we had the NUMMI plant here in Northern California, which
Uh-huh.
was the joint venture between General Motors and Toyota, and it
Mhm.
employed a lot of people. And when it closed, I guess right around 99 or 2000, people freaked out, and it was sold for a
Yeah.
song for next to nothing to Tesla. And even then, they were worried because here's this
Mhm.
huge plant, and Tesla was occupying like less than 10% of it. So they were like, what's gonna, the jobs, and not just the jobs at the plant, but there were all these
Kind of what Tesla is
fires.
doing. It's kind of what Tesla is doing now with
Well,
his
yeah,
new
it's because
acquisition,
that's what
right?
happened. There are all these suppliers that provided parts and other goods to GM and this plant. So now Tesla has not only went from using just a tiny sliver of the factory, they've
Mhm.
expanded it 3 times and still have outgrown it. So the local industry is way stronger now than it was when GM closed. And the follow-up that she did, because she did a documentary, I believe it was a Japanese or Chinese company, a windshield company, took
Mhm.
over that plant. So
Okay.
the GM plant that was in Ohio, I guess it was, when that closed.
Right.
That
Right.
was her first documentary. So for 2 years, they spent time for 2 years filming in
Everything.
Ohio, in China,
Mhm. Mhm.
to create a new
Yeah.
documentary. And that's an impressive degree of investment in a project.
So it says here that she saw huge inequalities class-wise, and the small group became some broad sense of revolutionaries. She saw government that she felt did not work, and much of what I read about her makes even more sense today. She said, "It goes to how we treat each other." So if you want to start rooting out these sexist ways we operate, I mean, both women looking down upon ourselves and men thinking they own the world and are smarter and more capable, it goes both ways, right? So
Hmm.
she kind of took this kind of aspiration, and while she was attending Antioch, she hosted a radio show called The Single Girl that challenged women to think beyond the narrow generation gender traditions in which they were all being raised. That's like when women were supposed to be at home raising the children and men were king of the castle sort of thought. And we had progressed from there, but not entirely. She said she considered herself, from what I was reading, I kind of cut it down to herself thinking that she thought of herself as a kind of geek. And she was self-described as a very awkward kid. She didn't like what little girls were taught, when little girls were taught to play with dolls and sewing and whatnot. She was more into being a tomboy. And
The
I could
problem,
relate to
the
that
problem,
because,
the problem with the documentaries that she did, the way I'm reading the list and all that, it's almost a preaching to the choir type of thing. I get the sense that
yes,
unless if you cared about the issue enough to see that film, that
right.
documentary, you were already on her side of the argument. It wasn't
Maybe, but
going
it's
to
like
reach
I'm
people who needed to
absolutely,
hear it.
what I absolutely appreciate her side, but I was never exposed to it. She loved nature, she loved
No,
science,
but what I'm
and
getting,
she always wanted to
what
know
I'm
how,
getting at
yeah.
is, I don't think it didn't sound to me like her films would be seen by people who didn't already agree with her. So, in other words, they weren't going to change minds because they weren't going to reach the people whose minds needed to be
Oh,
changed. That could be, I hope I'm wrong. That's just the way I took
yeah,
it.
I don't know. I wish that she had more exposure. I read that she loved nature, she loved science, and she always wanted to understand how people worked because she felt she was so different.
Mm.
I kind of relate to that. She believed this is what led her to believe to be a filmmaker, and her curiosity about human nature sparked her 1971 debut film called Growing Up Female. This actually was a joint venture with her then partner, Jim Klein. And 40 years later, the Library of Congress for the National Film Registry selected it as a historically significant film. So I guess if I really want to go and find it, I could probably do that. Um, I wish I had known about her sooner. It says she was a very unique person, and she had offers from Hollywood. Did you know that?
I did not.
And she had offers to go to Hollywood and become a Hollywood movie producer, but she said no because of her personal commitment to tell stories of people that kept her in the Midwest. She was a champion for working class Americans who were in search of the American dream and had a unique way of storytelling and an ability to connect with all kinds of people on such a human level and tell their stories in a respectful and empathetic way. She also, let's see, and over the years, she mentored dozens of emerging filmmakers as a professor of motion pictures at Wright State University. There was so much more to write down, but like I said, I didn't want to do a really deep dive. And so, do you have anything else to
I
add?
do not. I do not.
I guess we are moving on to Mills Lane, another person who sort of knew about, but I didn't know his name. He was 85 years old. I have here, you're going to straighten this out for me because when I looked up cause of death, it said complications of a stroke that he had in
Yeah.
2002,
Yeah.
which left him unable to speak. But in the article that I read, it stated that he died from kidney failure.
not unusual. It's not unusual
Okay.
to suffer organ
So,
failure.
right. So he was a full-time judge and a part-time boxing referee. Became one of the sport's most recognizable figures
Let's
after
get it on.
disqualifying. Yes, let's. And he had disqualified Mike Tyson for chomping off a slice of Evander
Yes,
Holyfield's ear. So I
twice.
started reading about all this. So yes, he had. You just kind of told them his legendary before he would start a bout, he would say it again, Mark.
Let's get it on.
Let's get it on. So I of course remember this whole to do about the event, all the commercials about Holyfield and the fight.
Right.
It was big television revenue. I of course did not watch it. My dad, I'm not sure if my dad was still alive, but if he was, he sure was tuned in.
Well, I
He was a-
didn't know. I didn't know he fought professionally for 6 years.
He did. He refereed more than 100 championship fights with primetime or main events that were televised with really big names. I mean, because if I heard of them, everybody heard of them. Muhammad Ali, Sugar Ray Leonard, Larry Holmes, Roberto Duran, and Marvelous Marvin Hagler. I was not too sure about that last name. I wondered
Hagler? You weren't.
Hagler.
What do you mean you weren't sure about Hagler?
I didn't know if I really remembered who he was.
Oh my
I mean,
God!
I obviously know he was a boxer, but do I remember that? Not really.
He was one of the best in that
I remember
group.
George Frazier, but he's not on the list.
Joe
I
Frazier.
wondered to go back to
not
your
George
point.
Frazier. Joe Frazier.
Yeah, to go back to your point, I often wondered if referees had been boxers, and it says that he in fact was a former boxer. He was also a Marine, a district attorney, and a judge. He was
10
five.
he was 10 and 1 in his boxing career.
How
And
about
I was
that?
surprised. I figured the one was the law. At the end of his career, he lost his first fight and then went on to win the next 10. So I'm not sure why he didn't continue to move up in,
Well, I
in
have
the ranks.
here. Yeah, I have here. He was 5 feet 7 inches and weighing less than 150 pounds. Would that make him a lightweight or a middleweight?
I never know.
I know there are classes, but I
Yeah.
don't know. So he's kind of small for a fighter.
Well,
But
no,
the
again,
article-
he
Right.
he's
The article said that in an autobiography, which he wrote in 1998, that something about how he would keep up the pounding action, slipping in and out of that specter of unmitigated fear and confusion, prying apart hundreds of pounds of frustration, rage, and fury. That almost sounds like, in a not quite as elegant way as Muhammad Ali. He would say, it sounds to me like he was a dancer. How Muhammad used to be like he had like fancy footwork.
yeah.
So not having ever seen him fight, when I read that part, I'm thinking of Muhammad Ali saying, fight like a butterfly, sting like a bee, because it was this sort of fancy footwork that he did. And then he would sort of he would sort of distract the other boxer and then come in with a fury of punches. So I'm thinking that was his same style of fighting. I remember hearing about the fight between Tyson and Holyfield, but in the article I was reading, they went into real detail, and I was like, "Holy crap!"
But the two things I got a kick out of, I learned, one, he was a last-second replacement as referee for that fight, and two, his shirt, because of Tyson biting Holyfield's ear twice, which ultimately got him disqualified. His shirt was covered with blood that he immediately sold to a collector. A memorabilia collector immediately bought the shirt from him that night.
I didn't get that part. What I got was
I thought that was
that that he warned. So he sort of missed the first bite. He didn't really see it, but then like he
Well,
saw
it was
all
out of
this blood dripping
he
from his
didn't see
ear.
the actual bite. He saw Holyfield's reaction, facial reaction.
Right.
So
And
he knew it
then
was something unusual happening. He saw the
right.
blood.
Then he said when he saw like him holding his ear,
Right.
he kind of went to the judges and said, "What should we do?" They allowed him to continue, but he warned Tyson that if he bit Holyfield again, he would be disqualified, and he did. He bit him again, and
Yeah.
because there were so many people who witnessed this, that it made him almost a celebrity, and he appeared on all these talk shows, including Larry King and Jay Leno.
I knew
And
he had been. I knew he was a TV judge because I remember watching that show periodically.
which
I
show is
didn't
that?
realize that all the time he was refereeing, he was also an elected district attorney and then judge
I
in
was getting
Reno.
to that. That's right. So, here's another bit of information that I think is probably only important to me, because I found out that I was born on his birthday. He was born on November 12th, 1937, 22 years before I was even a thought. And another interesting fact that I learned was that being from the South, his family was from the South. The family owned Citizens Bank, Citizens and Southern Bank, then the largest bank in the state of Georgia. And the
I actually
family
had an
was
account there.
considered you did. And the
Yeah.
family was considered the South's version or equivalent of the Rockefellers.
I didn't know that. He also
Well,
achieved a later level of fame.
right. The quote that I love the most was, because you had brought up that he was a judge. The quote I loved the most was where it said he was revered and feared for his law and order demeanor in the courtroom and the boxing ring, and that he was also inducted into the International Boxing Hall of Fame in 2013.
He was also voiced the referee on MTV's Celebrity Deathmatch, where
Oh,
plastic versions of celebrities squared off against each other in these, I guess, stop motion animated rock'em sock'em
I didn't
robot
even
type
ever hear
fights.
that.
Well, it took advantage of his "Let's Get It On." Now, I don't think
Right.
his "Let's Get It On" ever got, what's his name, Michael. The name's right on the tip of my tongue. Let's get ready to, and I can
To
go.
rumble.
No, you can't finish that because we'll get sued. Oh,
Oh,
he has gotten tens of thousands of dollars
it wasn't
for
that guy
people who
he
use.
was on a commercial,
He
right?
gets. He's made a
On
fortune
a
off that
commercial,
phrase.
let's get ready to eat or something, right?
He copyrighted it. He owns it. If it gets used, he gets paid. And if it gets
Okay.
used, so
But so then when they did, I don't know what
I don't.
commercial was that for?
But
He
they
was
paid
on,
him.
huh?
They paid him.
Yeah, but do you remember that commercial? It was
It's
like,
been a bunch.
let's get ready to eat. It
There's
was
been
like,
a bunch of commercials where he's exploited
yeah,
that. I don't think "Let's Get It On" ever became quite the same
right,
cultural touch mark
right.
as that. Anything else on Mills Lane?
No, I do have, usually I bring up, this is when I usually find an animal story. Today, I'm sorry, no animal story, but I do have a story about a sort of dead, undead, and dead again car called the Bogward. The former Bogward car manufacturing company, which was based in Germany, was founded by Carl F.W. Bogward in 1890, and he died in 1963. It produced cars of 4 brands, which were sold to a diversified international customer base. So it says that the Borgward's Isabella was one of the most popular German premium models in the 1950s. So when we see all those black and white movies, chances are those big cars we're seeing were probably that model. It says while Lloyd's 600 model offered affordable mobility to many working class motorists. The group ceased operations in 1961, right? So that would mean it's dead, right? Jim
Mhm.
would, what was it? McCoy would say it dead, Jim. In 2015, Bogward announced it was back from the dead, and the name and trademark had been sold to a Chinese company. And less than a year later, Zombie Bogward had a car to sell called the BX7.
By the way,
It
that
didn't.
wasn't that unprecedented. Uh, Famous names like Jaguar and Land Rover were, I believe Jaguar was ultimately purchased by a company in India to establish
Mhm,
both an international reputation and to enter the prestigious market. Same with Land Rover. So it
right.
was, the idea that a Chinese manufacturer bought a famous luxury
German
brand
car.
name isn't
Yeah.
that unprecedented?
Well, it didn't last long because the undead automaker is officially dead again.
What happened?
It wasn't making the sales.
Well,
Wasn't making the sales.
apparently they had some real quality control issues
Yeah.
that took them from 30,000 sales in their first year to less than 1,500 in their second year. Which
All
is
right.
also
Well,
not unusual. Do you remember the early Hyundais?
yeah, they're all made out of aluminum foil.
Well, no, that was the Yugo. Hyundai and Yugo hit the American market at the same time, basically with the same purpose to be a really inexpensive first car, a new car at used car prices. They probably both hit the market in the mid 80s here for $4,000 or less. The Yugo was a really poorly made, poorly sourced, lack of quality control car. It was a company that was really destined to fail. Hyundai had quality issues at first, although most of their cars were reasonably well made. But what they were essentially brand new 3-year-old Toyotas and Hondas. They were taking the types of cars that Toyota and Honda would have been making 3 years earlier and using that technology. Yugo died. Hyundai survived, and what they did next was put 100,000-mile warranty on the cars, which would give purchasers some peace of mind who were aware of the earlier quality control issues. They put 100,000-mile warranties when a 12,000-mile warranty was the norm. And then they not only tremendously increased the quality, rather than making cars that were technologically 3 or 4 years behind the industry leaders, they're now among the industry leaders. So,
Mhm.
and they've won many quality awards.
They're light on gas.
They're very efficient. They are ahead of Toyota and Nissan and probably Honda in terms of all electric rather than
Mhm.
hybrid electric. And they're still generally model for model slightly less expensive than the big three. So it is possible to go from that. China is starting to get closer to that model where China is now making higher quality world cars rather than inexpensive cars for the Chinese market and the other Asian, low income market. So Bogward was one of their first entries into a European brand or Western brand, but it's not going to be their last. And I don't think you're going to see that many failures. Whether Bogward ultimately is revived or not, I don't think.
Remains to be seen.
Yeah.
Well, this is one of your favorite parts of the show. Is we're getting near our wrap up. You got some promotions for our listeners?
In our next episode of Over the Rainbow, we're going to have a cast member Parks and Recreation has lost a cast member. One of the most significant women with the covers of Sports Illustrated swimsuit issue for years is no longer with us. There's going to be famous names from the world of rock music that we're going to be talking about. Some that will be surprising you. Those are just some of the things that will be featured and have a dinner in next week's program, assuming we have one.
Right.
Anything that, anything, yeah.
Right, because as we always state, you need to always show your love for the ones you care today, because they may not be here tomorrow.
That's right. Well, this has been another week of Over the Rainbow with Sharon Yankwitz and Mark Silverman. Until we meet again.
Till next
Judy jumped in
time.
front of a subway train. Eddie got slit in the jugular vein. And Eddie, I miss you more than all the others. And I